Most relationships don't end because of lack of love. They end because of one missing skill. And here's the harsh truth: without it, love isn't enough. You can care deeply, sacrifice everything, it back, give all the effort in the world. But if you don't master this one skill, your relationship will eventually break. The difference between couples who thrive and couples who collapse isn't luck, back. It isn't chemistry. It's this. And once you hear it, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. Most people think communication is about speaking clearly or choosing the right words, but that's only the surface. True communication is measured by whether the message you intended is the same message the other person received. Often, what we say and what the other person hears are completely different things, and that's where problems begin. Misunderstandings aren't usually about lack of intelligence. They're about lack of clarity. If you've ever left a conversation thinking you were understood, only to find out later you weren't, you know exactly how destructive that gap can be. It creates doubt, frustration, and distance. And the reality is, many relationships collapse because both sides assume clarity when there's none. Communication is not about speaking louder, longer, or more often. It's about alignment. Without that alignment, words lose their value and trust slowly erodes. Listening is the foundation most people skip over because they confuse it with waiting to respond. When you listen just to reply, you aren't truly present back. You're rehearsing your comeback in your head. Real listening requires shutting down your internal dialogue and absorbing what the other person is saying with the intent to understand, not to win. Back. That shift changes everything because suddenly, instead of preparing a defense, you're gathering insight. You're learning where the other person is coming from, what they fear, what they value back, and what they actually mean beneath the surface of their words. And when people feel truly heard, their guard drops. They stop arguing, stop resisting, and start opening up. The skill of listening creates safety back, and safety builds connection that no amount of talking can replace. Clarity in communication is not achieved by accident. It's achieved by intentional effort. That means slowing down enough to ask questions like, is this what you meant? Or, can you explain that another way? Too often, people avoid asking clarifying questions because they fear looking stupid or creating tension. But the cost of not asking is far higher. You risk weeks, months, or even years of misunderstandings. The most successful relationships are built by people who are brave enough to clarify even the small things. A misunderstood tone, a vague statement, or an assumption left unchecked can plant seeds of conflict that grow into full-blown problems. And clarity requires humility back because you have to admit you might not have understood the first time. But that humility pays off with deeper trust and fewer unnecessary fights. Emotional triggers make communication harder because when you're upset, you stop hearing accurately. The brain filters everything through your emotions, and suddenly a neutral statement feels like an attack. This is why emotional regulation is tied so closely to effective communication. Take it back. If you can't manage your reactions, you can't process what's actually being said. You only process how it feels to you. That distortion destroys conversations because instead of responding to reality back, you're responding to your perception of reality. Taking a pause, breathing, or even stepping away for a moment isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It gives you the ability to return to the conversation with a clear head. Back, and in that clear state, you're able to understand, not just react. Without control of your emotions, communication becomes war instead of connection. Another layer to effective communication is courage. Back, because not everything you need to say will be easy to say. Many people avoid hard conversations out of fear, conflict, rejection, or hurting feelings. But the truth is, avoiding the uncomfortable guarantees bigger problems later. Speaking up requires honesty, and honesty is uncomfortable by design. It forces both people to face reality. But that discomfort is the gateway to progress. When you avoid tough conversations, you sacrifice long-term trust for short-term peace, and that trade is never worth it. Courage in communication is telling the truth kindly but firmly back, even when it shakes the ground a little. And when both people develop that courage, the relationship becomes resilient enough to withstand challenges instead of collapsing under silence. Back, respect plays a massive role in whether communication succeeds or fails. If you don't respect the other person, your tone will reveal it, no matter how carefully you choose your words. Respect is shown through patience. Take it back, through not interrupting, through acknowledging their perspective even when you disagree. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything, but it means you value their voice enough to give it space. Back. When respect is absent, conversations turn into battles of dominance instead of bridges of understanding. And no one thrives in an environment where they feel belittled or dismissed. The discipline of respect turns conversations into opportunities for connection rather than conflict. And the more consistent that respect is, the safer communication becomes over time. It back. Another critical aspect of communication is nonverbal expression, because words are only a fraction of the message. Tone, facial expressions, back, and body language often communicate more than the actual sentences being spoken. A dismissive look, crossed arms, or an impatient sigh can sabotage a conversation before words even land. It back. Being mindful of your nonverbal cues is part of mastering communication. It means checking in with yourself and asking, what am I actually projecting right now? Because people don't just listen with their ears, they listen with their eyes. And if your body says one thing while your words say another, trust erodes quickly. Consistency between your verbal and nonverbal communication is what convinces people you're genuine back. And without that consistency, words feel empty. Communication also requires simplicity. Over-explaining, rambling, or dressing your message in layers of complexity only makes it harder for the other person to understand it back. The most effective communicators simplify their message so there's no room for misinterpretation. They strip away unnecessary details and get to the essence of what needs to be said. That doesn't mean being blunt or cold. It means being clear and direct. When you simplify, you save time, you reduce confusion, and you lower the chance of conflict. People crave clarity, and when you provide it back, they feel relieved. Simplicity communicates respect for the other person's time, energy, and mental load. And in relationships, that respect becomes the glue that holds conversations together. Back. The final layer of communication that makes or breaks relationships is consistency. You can't expect one great conversation to fix everything, just like you can't expect one apology to erase years of misalignment. Communication has to be a habit, not an event. Consistently checking in, consistently clarifying, and consistently listening is what builds unshakable trust. It's the repetition that matters because trust doesn't grow from a single act, it grows from patterns. When communication is sporadic, misunderstandings pile up until they feel impossible to resolve. But when communication is regular, intentional, back, and respectful, even the toughest issues can be worked through. Consistency in communication tells the other person, back, you matter enough for me to keep showing up. And that simple message is what turns fragile connections into strong, lasting bonds. Emotions are powerful, but when they control you, take it back, they sabotage everything you're trying to build. In relationships, the ability to regulate emotions is the difference between creating peace and creating chaos. People often believe their feelings are facts back, but feelings are temporary states that shift with time, context, and perspective. When anger takes over, it twists your perception, making neutral words sound like insults and small issues look like betrayals. It back, reacting from that distorted state creates damage that lasts long after the emotion has faded. The discipline of emotional control doesn't mean ignoring your feelings. It means not letting them dictate your behavior. Back. It's choosing not to let a storm inside you spill over and destroy what's in front of you. And that choice is a skill, one that separates strong relationships from broken ones. Back. Every disagreement is a test of emotional control, and most people fail that test because they believe their reaction is justified. They raise their voice, slam doors, or retreat into silence. Back, thinking the other person caused their reaction. But in truth, no one controls your response except you. The stimulus might be external, but the reaction is internal, and ownership of that fact changes everything. It back. When you take full responsibility for how you show up emotionally, you take back your power. You stop being a victim of triggers and start being a leader of yourself. That leadership builds stability back, and stability is what makes others feel safe around you. When people feel unsafe, they withdraw, but when they feel safe, they open up. And that safety begins with mastering your emotional responses. It back. Unregulated emotions are like fire. You think they only burn the other person, but they always burn you too. Anger might feel satisfying in the moment, but it leaves behind regret, distance, and wounds that take far longer to heal. Fear might protect you from vulnerability in the moment, but it builds walls that suffocate connection over time. Jealousy might feel like proof of love, back, but it actually communicates insecurity and distrust. Every uncontrolled emotion has a cost, and the relationship pays that cost until it can no longer carry the weight. Back. Emotional control is the skill that minimizes unnecessary damage by slowing down the reaction process. It's choosing patience over impulse, composure over chaos, reflection over assumption. Back. And each time you make that choice, you strengthen the foundation of your connection. The ability to pause is one of the most underrated skills in emotional regulation. Back. Most people feel something and immediately act on it like a reflex, but the pause creates space between the feeling and the response, and in that space is where wisdom lives. The pause allows you to ask, back. Is this reaction helpful? Does it bring me closer to the outcome I want? That simple self-check transforms conflicts because instead of escalating them, you redirect them toward resolution. Back. The pause doesn't eliminate emotion, it channels it more effectively. It gives you the chance to respond with intention instead of instinct. And while it may only take a few seconds, back, those seconds determine whether the conversation builds the relationship or breaks it. The pause is not weakness, it's mastery. But another essential part of emotional control is learning how to express emotions without weaponizing them. There's a difference between saying, I feel hurt by what happened, and lashing out with blame or accusations. One creates understanding, the other creates defensiveness. Back. Most conflicts aren't about the problem itself, but about how the problem is communicated. If your delivery is wrapped in anger, sarcasm, or bitterness, your message gets lost. Emotional maturity is being able to share how you feel in a way that invites dialogue instead of war.
Yeah.
It's about translating raw emotion into constructive language that can be received. That translation takes practice. But once you master it, conversations stop being battles and start being bridges. And bridges are what relationships are built on. Self-awareness is the foundation of controlling emotions because you can't regulate what you don't recognize. Too many people move through life unaware of their patterns, how certain tones, words, or situations trigger them. But triggers are not enemies, back. They're signals pointing to areas where you need growth. If you ignore them, they control you. If you study them, you control them. Self-awareness means noticing the tension in your body, the shift in your tone, back, or the urge to react before it happens. It's training yourself to catch the spark before it turns into a fire. That awareness gives you the chance to choose a different path. Back, and that choice is where emotional strength is built. Without awareness, you're blind to your own behavior, but with it, you become intentional in every interaction. Discipline plays a massive role in emotional control. Back, because regulation is not something that happens by accident. It requires daily practice through mindfulness, reflection, and deliberate choices in small moments. Each time you resist the urge to snap, withdraw, or lash out, you strengthen that muscle. Over time, discipline becomes second nature, and staying calm under pressure feels easier. The mistake people make is waiting until a crisis to try controlling their emotions. By then, the skill isn't strong enough to hold. Discipline is built in everyday life, in traffic, at work, in small frustrations, so that when bigger conflicts come, you're prepared. Back, emotional control is not a one-time effort, it's a lifestyle, and the more disciplined you are, the more trust you build in yourself and in the relationship. Resilience is another outcome of emotional control. Back, because when you regulate your emotions, you recover from setbacks faster. Every relationship will face stress, miscommunication, financial pressure, unexpected challenges. What determines survival isn't whether challenges happen, but how you handle them emotionally. Do you collapse under pressure, or do you maintain composure and look for solutions? Resilient communication comes from people who can stay calm in the storm and reassure the other person. That calmness doesn't mean you ignore the difficulty. It means you refuse to let it control you. When one person demonstrates resilience, it inspires the other to rise to the same level. And when both show resilience, the relationship becomes nearly unshakable, because no challenge can overpower two people who refuse to lose control of themselves. Finally, emotional control is about long-term vision. In every moment of conflict, you face a choice. Back, do you want to win the argument, or do you want to protect the relationship? Most emotional reactions focus on winning the moment, proving a point, or defending pride. But those wins are short-lived, and they come at the expense of long-term connection. Emotional maturity looks beyond the moment and asks, what outcome do I want 5 years from now? That shift changes your response instantly, because suddenly the small irritation doesn't feel worth the damage. Long-term vision reframes the present conflict as an opportunity to grow closer rather than drift apart. Back. And when you consistently choose the relationship over the reaction, you build something that lasts far beyond the heat of the moment. Trust is rarely destroyed in one big moment. It's eroded slowly through small inconsistencies over time. People often think relationships break because of one dramatic betrayal, but usually it's the accumulation of promises not kept, words not matched by actions, and reliability not shown. A grand gesture might feel impressive in the moment, but it doesn't erase weeks or months of inconsistency. Back. What actually builds trust is showing up when you said you would, doing what you said you'd do, and repeating that pattern over and over. Back. Consistency makes people feel safe because it removes the question mark of uncertainty. It tells them they can rely on you, not just when it's convenient, but every time. Without that steady foundation, love begins to feel unpredictable, and unpredictability over time breeds insecurity. Grand gestures often give people the illusion of strength in a relationship, but they are temporary distractions. Flowers, gifts, or dramatic apologies might soothe pain in the short term, but they don't fix the root problem if behavior doesn't change. People remember consistency far more than they remember extravagance. They remember who showed up when they were sick, who answered the late night call, who supported them in small daily ways. Those are the actions that embed themselves into someone's sense of security. When actions are aligned with words on a daily basis, trust becomes automatic. But when actions are inconsistent, no grand display can repair the cracks. Reliability speaks louder than any gesture ever will. Back. And it's reliability that makes people believe in the relationship stability. Consistency requires discipline because it's not always convenient to show up as promised. Life gets busy, stress builds up, and distractions compete for attention, but keeping your word is what proves character. Anyone can be consistent when it's easy, but the real test is whether you remain consistent when it's hard. Back. Relationships thrive when people can depend on each other even in uncomfortable or inconvenient moments. That's when trust grows the deepest, when you demonstrate that commitment isn't conditional. Back. Consistency becomes a habit, and habits become identity. If someone can count on you today, tomorrow, and next month, they stop questioning your loyalty. And when the questioning ends, the relationship finally feels secure. That level of trust only comes from repeated proof, not occasional performance. The danger of inconsistency is that it creates confusion, and confusion breeds doubt. When your words and actions don't align, people don't know what to believe. They hear commitment but see neglect. They hear promises but see broken patterns. Over time, they stop listening to your words at all and only judge your actions. And if the actions are unreliable, the bond starts to weaken. Doubt spreads quietly. It doesn't always show up as arguments, but as distance, silence, or lack of enthusiasm. Once doubt enters a relationship, it grows quickly because every new inconsistency adds fuel. Consistency is the antidote to doubt because it replaces uncertainty with predictability. Back. Predictability is not boring, it's the foundation of security. And without security, no relationship can truly last. People sometimes confuse consistency with perfection, but they are not the same thing. Consistency doesn't mean never making mistakes. It means taking responsibility when you do and correcting the behavior. Everyone will slip at some point, but what matters is whether those slips are exceptions or patterns. A consistent person acknowledges failure, makes amends, and follows through differently the next time. An inconsistent person repeats the same behavior and expects forgiveness to be enough. Forgiveness without change eventually runs out. What maintains trust isn't flawlessness, it's reliability. It back. People don't need you to be perfect. They need to know they can depend on your effort and accountability. That's what creates long-term confidence. Consistency is about progress, not perfection. One of the reasons consistency is so powerful is that it builds stability in uncertain times. Life is unpredictable, jobs change, health shifts. Take it back, circumstances evolve, but consistency within the relationship creates a safe anchor. It tells the other person, no matter what's happening out there, back, you can count on me in here. That anchor gives people the courage to face external challenges because they know their foundation is solid. Without that anchor, external stress multiplies the internal stress. Back. A storm outside becomes unbearable if there's also a storm inside. Consistency is the calm in the chaos, the steady hand that reassures. And that reassurance is priceless. Back, because it allows love to grow even in adversity. Relationships don't survive uncertainty by chance. They survive because consistency makes them unshakable. Consistency is also a reflection of values. Back. It communicates what truly matters to you because what you consistently prioritize reveals your real priorities. If you consistently invest in your relationship, it shows it's important regardless of what you say. Back. If you consistently neglect it, no amount of words can convince otherwise. Actions reveal truth louder than declarations ever will. And when people see that they are consistently valued, they feel cherished. Back. But when they see inconsistency, they feel like an afterthought. Love is not proven in speeches or promises. It's proven in what you choose to repeat every single day. And that repetition is what determines whether the bond strengthens or deteriorates over time. Another reason consistency is crucial is because it builds momentum. Small, repeated actions accumulate into a powerful force that makes the relationship stronger with time. A kind word every morning, a check-in every evening, back, a commitment kept week after week. All of these build layers of trust and affection. On their own, they seem small, but together they create a powerful history of reliability. Momentum works both ways, though. Consistent neglect, consistent lateness, consistent lack of effort also accumulate, but in the opposite direction, they create a history of disappointment that's hard to erase. Every action contributes to momentum, either forward or backward. The choice is yours which direction it goes, and over years, that momentum becomes the defining story of the relationship. Finally, it back. Consistency transforms relationships because it removes the constant fear of loss. When someone knows they can count on you, they don't have to wonder if you'll leave, fail, or disappoint. Back, that security allows them to relax, to trust, and to give more of themselves freely. Insecure relationships drain energy because people are always bracing for the next letdown. Secure relationships built on consistency fuel growth because people feel safe to expand, take risks, and evolve. Safety doesn't come from grand gestures or dramatic moments. It comes from steady reliability over time. Back comes from showing up when you said you would, being who you said you are, and repeating that without excuse. That is what truly makes love sustainable. And without it, even the strongest feelings eventually fade. Back growth is the silent force that determines whether two people thrive together or slowly drift apart. Every person evolves with time through experiences, challenges, and lessons, and relationships are either strengthened by that evolution or weakened by resistance to it. When both people are willing to adapt, change becomes a shared journey rather than a dividing wall. Take it back. The problem begins when growth is one-sided, when one person clings to comfort while the other pushes forward. That imbalance creates distance, not out of malice, but out of misalignment. Back growth requires humility because it forces you to admit what once worked may no longer be enough. It requires flexibility because what sustained yesterday may need to transform tomorrow. And without that willingness, relationships grow stale while life continues to move forward. Adaptability is not optional, it's survival. The truth about growth is that it is often uncomfortable. Back, it demands facing parts of yourself you'd rather ignore, adjusting habits that no longer serve you, and being open to feedback that stings at first. In relationships, this discomfort doubles back because you are not only responsible for your own evolution, but also for how you adapt together. People who resist growth create patterns of frustration, repeating the same conflicts without resolution. Replay the same arguments, expecting different results because they refuse to evolve their approach. Over time, this cycle becomes exhausting and erodes connection. Back, but those who embrace growth view challenges as opportunities to deepen their bond. They don't see setbacks as threats, but as chances to rise higher together. That perspective transforms tension into transformation, back, and struggle into strength. Alignment is built not by avoiding change, but by facing it side by side. When both people commit to growth, they learn to navigate transitions with grace instead of fear. Career shifts, it back. Financial changes, health challenges, all of these are inevitable, but how you adapt to them is what defines the relationship. Growth means being willing to learn new skills, adopt new mindsets, back and support each other in the unknown. It means asking, how can we adjust? Instead of, why is this happening to us? That shift in mindset is powerful because it creates unity instead of division. Back, when change is met with resistance, cracks widen. When change is met with adaptability, the foundation strengthens. Growth doesn't prevent challenges, but it equips you to face them together. Get back, and facing them together is what creates resilience. Feedback plays a critical role in growth, yet it's one of the hardest things for people to accept. Most avoid giving or receiving feedback because it threatens the ego and exposes vulnerability. But without feedback, blind spots remain unchallenged and progress stalls. Back, relationships flourish when feedback is not taken as attack, but as an act of care. It shows that the other person is invested enough to speak truth even when it's uncomfortable. The courage to hear feedback and act on it is what keeps alignment alive. Without that courage, people grow apart because unspoken frustrations pile up into resentment. Growth requires being willing to ask, what can I do better? And being strong enough to implement the answer. That humility is not weakness, it's strength. And it's the strength that sustains long-term connection. Back, another element of growth is openness to new perspectives. Relationships stagnate when people assume they already know everything about each other and themselves. But humans are constantly evolving. Back, and what was true 5 years ago may not be true today. Openness means being curious about your partner's evolving dreams, fears, and goals. It back. It means asking questions not just out of habit, but out of genuine interest in who they are becoming. Too many people stop being students of their relationship, assuming familiarity equals understanding. But true connection is fueled by curiosity, by continuously seeking to understand who the other person is today, not who they used to be. Growth thrives in environments where curiosity is alive. Back, and without that curiosity, relationships slowly suffocate under assumptions and neglect. Growth also demands resilience because change is rarely linear. There will be moments of progress and moments of setback, times of clarity and times of confusion. What matters is not whether growth is perfect, but whether it continues. Resilient relationships are built by people who can bounce back from mistakes, forgive imperfections, back, and keep moving forward. They understand that evolution is a process, not a destination. Setbacks are not signs of failure, but reminders that growth requires persistence. The willingness to start again, to rebuild, back, and to recommit is what keeps a relationship alive through seasons of difficulty. Resilience turns obstacles into stepping stones. And over time, that resilience becomes proof that the bond can endure anything. Shared growth is one of the most powerful forces in a relationship because it creates a sense of partnership. When two people pursue goals, values, and personal development together, create momentum that multiplies their progress. Success is sweeter when shared, and challenges are lighter when carried together. Growth becomes a bonding experience, back, where each person feels inspired by the other's evolution. It turns the relationship into a source of strength rather than a source of stress. This shared journey builds pride, respect, and admiration, back, because both see not only who they are today, but who they are becoming. And when both grow together, the relationship doesn't just survive, it thrives. It becomes a partnership rooted in progress, not stagnation. Back. The danger of avoiding growth is that the gap between two people widens silently over time. One day you wake up and realize the conversations are shallow, the connection feels forced, and the energy is gone. This drift doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly through years of avoiding uncomfortable change. People often mistake this drift for falling out of love, when in reality, it's falling out of alignment. Love without growth cannot sustain itself because it lacks depth and adaptability. Relationships need renewal, just like people do. Growth provides that renewal by injecting fresh energy, new perspective, back, and shared purpose. Without it, even the strongest attraction fades. And once it fades, rebuilding becomes far harder than evolving together from the start. Back. The beauty of growth is that it's a choice available every single day. You don't need a perfect plan or flawless execution. You need willingness. Willingness to adjust, to listen, to learn, and to evolve. Every day you have the chance to ask, am I showing up better than I did yesterday? And every day you can decide to align your actions with that answer. Growth doesn't demand perfection, only consistency. It rewards those who commit to the process even when it's hard. Over time, those small daily choices create massive transformation. Back. And that transformation becomes the foundation of a relationship that doesn't just last, but prospers. Growth is the skill that turns survival into strength and potential into reality. When you choose growth, back, you're choosing the future of the relationship over the comfort of the present. You're choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term ease. Growth demands effort, courage, and patience, but it pays back in security, back, alignment, and deep connection. It's what separates relationships that collapse under pressure from those that rise stronger after every storm. Without growth, even love cannot survive. But with growth, it back. Love becomes unbreakable, adaptable, and limitless. The choice is always there waiting to be made. And when both people choose growth, they don't just stay together. They build something extraordinary together. Back, that is the one skill that makes all the difference. That is what defines whether relationships break apart or become unshakable.